And this is still not centered the way I'd like it to be. All right. Hello, everyone. Today's the 21st of October, 2021, and I can imagine that you can imagine what I'm going to mention today. Hello, as you come in. Thanks for being here. Uh, my filament and my light's still out. I probably won't bother to fix it. You know, some of these, I've got the old-fashioned studio lights. They use they're different types. They're actual photography bulbs. They're not LEDs, so they have a problem when they get old. And the problem I have is that I could still replace these bulbs for about $30 when they burn out. But a new LED light, you've got to buy the whole thing. I mean, the socket, the body, the whole lamp with the stand, and they're like $400. Even on the internet, they're outrageous. So I know it makes me look a little red and orange and all that, but as you can tell when I do my recordings where I can balance the white balance, I really don't look like this as far as this redness and orangeness. So I just thought I'd mention that again just in case. Hello, everyone, again, as you come in. Orange Kernel, good. Well, I appreciate that. Maybe that's not a bad idea. Orange Kernel, good. I don't know. We'll see. Could be, could be. So, what am I talking about here today? Hi, Roosevelt. Nice for you to be here. I appreciate you helping me keep as Monty says, keep the room clean, I guess is the phraseology. And I thought I'd do some things today that need to be addressing. Not that you all don't know about them, but I had a friend of mine who's a former Special Forces soldier, Army soldier, Green Beret, who got a hold of me today and said, because I sent him this thing about Fauci and the NIH, and that the NIH has admitted now that uh, they did fund the gain of function at the lab over there in China, right? I'm trying not to use too many words linked together here that might alert the AI or any sensors that are probably watching. In the description box below is an article from Breitbart. I said Breitbart, Breitbart, which verifies this, and of course it's pretty much all out now. We've known it for months. It's just that no one has wanted to cover it. Well, the big question is why now? And I can't really answer that. I don't know if they're getting ready to throw Collins and Fauci under the bus. I don't know how Gates is going to be looked at this, but I can't actually believe with the failure of the law enforcement, federal law enforcement, the DOJ, etc., failing to go after people like Hillary Clinton, uh, uh, General Hayden, General Clapper, and of course people like Anthony Weiner, although they kind of went after him, but not really. How Hastert got off so easily with the horrible things he was doing. Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, etc., etc. None of those people were gone after, and they did a lot of damage, especially Hillary Clinton, to our intelligence structure. Our undercovers overseas in various countries, which I won't address right now because that again might alert the AI. All of these things happening, and what does the FBI and the DOJ and Nancy Pelosi and all these people concentrate on? Any questioning of their power. What am I referring to? Of course, things like Bundy Ranch, things like Waco, things like the January 6th deal, where the majority of the people there, I don't really know what the percentage of those who actually intentionally committed crimes or assaults or damage to property. I don't actually know how many there were, but I know that there weren't 600 of them. All right. Hi, Jesse. How you doing? Yeah, we are under full attack. That's exactly right. And most of those people didn't even have the intent of trespassing. They were invited on. As a matter of fact, when all of that was going on, if anybody was watching my channel or on my Twitter, I actually had some of that footage where people were entering, that I found on the internet of people entering the Capitol at the invitation of the Capitol Police. And thank you. And so when you're invited on, that's not a crime. I'm sorry. When you're invited in somebody's house, that's not a crime. When you're invited there, that's not a crime. And yet the DOJ went after all these people. They haven't been able to charge anybody with insurrection, but they've been holding them for months on misdemeanor charges, possibly destruction of property at the very most. And all of that's unjust, and we know that. So here they go after these little people, and some deserve probably to be arrested if they assaulted police officers or whatever. I understand that, but the majority of them are not, and we know that. And Julie Kelly has been very good at covering this on Twitter. She's a journalist that's been covering a lot of this. Has contact with the families of a lot of the victims of this injustice and tyranny out of the DOJ and out of the office of the president and of course Nancy Pelosi, et cetera, et cetera. But it's real interesting that they go after those people, and as everybody's complained, we just had that invasion of a federal building this last week by Antifa. Again, I'm not going to name exact places just to make sure I don't say too much at one time. And uh, you know, wow, what in the world's going on? With that situation, right? Uh, is anybody arrested there? Is anybody being charged with insurrection? No. And all the damage that we saw from Antifa and BLM over the last 24 months, etc., right? All of that. So we've got that stuff going on, and the DOJ now is presented with the information from the NIH that indeed they were funding gain of function research, which is criminal, and also giving it over to our uh, how should I say this? Our competitors on the world stage, the ones over there that make the really nice dishware and those types of things. Today, today, Fauci should be arrested. Collins should be arrested. Gates should be arrested, and all of those people that were working together on this entire conspiratorial deal. All of the evidence for an arrest is out there right now, and it should happen. Will it? Well, as I just said, we didn't see it happen to any of the other people in the past, but there is a difference. There is a big difference. With the Russia investigation on Trump and all of that nonsense, and I don't like Trump, so I'm not defending him, but I'm also not defending corrupt law enforcement and prosecutorial powers, okay? Definitely not. But it's interesting that uh, with that whole situation, if they don't go after Fauci and those guys now, what they're doing is they're sanctioning, they're saying it's okay to not only fund biological warfare research, especially gain of function, which is illegal, all right, give it to our enemies, which is treason, and further, that the combination of all of these things having to do with it, and again, I'm being circumspect here, the GMI is not just the sickness itself, is actually killing people, maiming, injuring, and killing people, just like on a real battlefield where you have killed in action, missing in action, and injured, okay? Casualties. We have that going on, which, other than the intelligence operatives, we really didn't have under any of the things that were going on in the Russia investigation and the corruption of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, uh, Peter Strzok, all of those folks, okay, James Comey, etc., Hillary Clinton, etc., Steele, etc. I could keep going on and on and on. This is real warfare on us, and as Jesse just pointed out from BP Earthwatch, they are waging war upon us. It is actual war. And for our DOJ and our DOD not to be taking defensive and even offensive action at this point shows you that we have nobody taking their oath seriously. As a matter of fact, they don't give a rat's ass about the people of this country, not really, or of the world for that matter. I've often talked about the Ian Fleming novels, you know, 007 out there to save us from the mad scientists. Well, now the DOD, the IC, the FBI, the Senate, the House of Representatives, the President, all of the bureaucracies, they are all part of the mad scientist conspiratorial plot. And real deaths and injuries and casualties are happening in this war. And those casualties are being accelerated and increased. The statistics show it by the forceful rape. And that's what entering your body without your knowledge of what's going on. It's like, you know, if you don't know what's going on, it's like, it's not just that you don't have informed consent. It's that you're not being told the actual ramifications of, well, it's a rape, okay? That's what it is. And now they want to do it to our children. Today, it came out that the state of Utah is now moving forward to be ready to use the GMIs on 5 to 12-year-olds. And I'm going to talk more about the state of Utah in just a minute, and the Mormon Church in particular that's helping to push this in the state of Utah. In Wyoming, there has now been a bill introduced to stop forced GMIs. Okay, now they had something for certain workers, state workers, the government, but they're trying to get another one through there as well. Okay, and Mike Lee, a senator. Hi, Felicia, how you doing? Mike Lee, the one of the two senators, the other one's Mitt Romney. I hate to even say his name, but Mike Lee, along with another person in Congress, submitted a bill also to prohibit this, especially preventing interstate travel, requiring a license, I'll just say it, a passport to go interstate, because we do have Article 4 of the Constitution and about freedom of travel and all that, and they're trying to use this emergency, which is obviously not an emergency, and they couldn't trump the Constitution with that anyway. But you know, if we don't stand up against this, they can do to us what we want. As I've often said, I've quoted Judge Learned Hand many times, who said, if we, and I'm paraphrasing, if we don't have our rights written in our hearts, in the hearts of men and women, no court, no constitution, no Congress, no government is going to be able to protect it. We have to do it. And so we have to stand up. And I really like the way David Knight's been talking about that we can't ask for our rights. We have to take them back, just like they're taking them from us. We have to take them back and exercise them. Rights are responsibilities. In other words, the ability to respond, right? Okay. So the bottom line on that whole dissertation right there is that I'm like a lot of people right now. What the hell's wrong with you in the DOJ and the FBI and in all the other agencies that would have anything to do with this? I already know Biden's not going to do it. He might even. Oh, I thought that when Trump was in there, they said, oh, the DOJ shouldn't respond to the president, even though they work for the president. Well, now that Biden's in there, of course, the DOJ is going to do what he says and nobody's going to call him on it, right? Well, the fact of the matter is we all need to, right now, demand that Fauci be arrested and everybody else involved with this thing, including Gates, and then the CIA, and they won't, of course, should go after Schwab. We should have Delta Force right now raiding Mr. Schwab. Let me kind of, change it just a little bit. Right now. So there is a war going on, and these people are committing it, and it's worldwide, and our defense establishment will not protect us against these enemies. We need to get mad about that, ladies and gentlemen. You need to be calling the White House, your senators, your congressmen, the DOJ, the FBI, and screaming like hell that this war is being waged upon us and they are doing nothing. And as a matter of fact, they are doing something. They're protecting the guilty, the war criminals, and those that are attacking us. We have a right to defend ourselves. As it stands right now, and I'm not saying this is the time, we have a right now to bring up arms against these people that are attacking us with these weapons. And now, as in the state of Utah, they are going to force vaccine. Well, they're not going to say they're going to force. They're putting in words like, we're going to make it so that it'll be available to get the GMI. Oh, no, 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 no. The peer pressure, the situation with if you don't do this, you'll have to do all these other little dumb things to inconvenience you, which is also happening to one of my daughters right now who's a nurse. Oh, she got the medical exemption, did I tell you? But she's under all kinds of restrictions, having to be tested several times a week, having to wear a mask, having to isolate herself. She was offered, as David Knight explained, she was offered a situation where, you know, she could, or actually she wasn't offered it. They said that they were going to put her on administrative leave, medical leave or something like that, leave without pay. Well, of course, that's just to force her to quit so they don't have to fire her. Well, fortunately, she's a fighter and she stuck around and she fought it in every way. So at any rate, we're in good shape right now. But of course, those medical exemptions, even though that's a really good way to go, they'll find a way around them or just cancel them altogether, especially once the communists take full control, the Marxists, which is going to happen. So in Utah, they're getting ready to do that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But I just want to make sure that you understand that this situation right now, with all this information coming out of Fauci, you need to get angry. You need to demonstrate. This special forces guy that I know, he's going to call a couple of different organizations in the state of Utah, and hopefully they're going to set up some demonstrations, not at the state capitol on this one, although that might be what they do. I'd like them to go to the federal building in Salt Lake City, but we'll see if anything at all happens, because it's very difficult to get Mormons up off their ass to protect their own skins. Okay, so what's going to happen here? Well, I don't know how they're going to react to the powers that be, for instance, but I've often said that rather than lose power, they will destroy everything, because they want to destroy everything anyway. We already know, and I gave that information last night about the entire change in flesh and the genetics and all of that. And further than that, okay, they will destroy everything rather than lose power. They don't give a rat's ass about you. And shame on the DOD and the DOJ and the CIA, et cetera, for being behind a lot of this. They need to go away. They need to go away. We have every right in the world right now to take up arms to defend ourselves. Problem is, they know that we can't organize that way, which is why I say that we have to have several state competent authorities under a competent governor that can bring this about and say, you don't cross this line, feds. But nobody's brave enough to do that. Not even Ron DeSantis at this point, and certainly not Abbott. And they're the two closest ones. Matter of fact, I keep seeing on Twitter, gee, you know, the rest of the country's all Marxists except for Florida and Texas. What? Somebody's not aware of some of the more intricate details of some of the things that have been happening under DeSantis and under Abbott. But that's just typical, you know. Pat these Republican rhinos, these pretenders on the back, yeah, and keep supporting Trump. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's enough on that. Capping all of that, Fauci, Gates, Collins, et cetera, all those people involved in that need to be arrested today, and we need to be mad as hell because they've been waging war on us and on the entire world. They are war criminals, not just traitors. They need to be arrested now. And then to go along with that, even with all this information that's out there, the Utah state government is saying they're going to start vaccinating, I shouldn't have used that word, using GMIs on children ages 5 to 12. Okay, let's talk about why the state of Utah is going there. And I point back, just like I did a few days ago when I was talking about you've got to get in the faces of these churches. Not to say you should, and I said you shouldn't worry so much about demonstrating at the state capitals. And I don't mean that you can't or that you shouldn't, but that the real issue, especially in states like Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Arizona, um, Nevada. Okay, the predominant religion is Mormon. And then in Maryland, it's Catholicism, as it is in some other places. You need to go and you need to tell your churches, because both the Catholics, the Pope, and the president of the Mormon Church, the prophet, seer, and revelator, so called, along with his 12 apostles in the first presidency, has said to go along with his GMI and have encouraged it. So those people have given cover. Not, in other words, the governor's got all this incentive from Trump to go down this emergency situation, which was totally uncalled for, to get money. And to keep getting the money, they keep pushing these things down on the people, endangering their lives under the pretense that they're doing something to help them. Yeah, right. No, it's all about money, and it's to take control under the AI and to kill off the predominant number of people in this country. Cliff High, a guy who has, and I should have put some of his information on here. He's on Twitter. He also has a YouTube channel, I believe. Well, it's BitChute at least, and then he has a blog or a website. I don't know if any of you know him, but he gives some very, very good briefings. And he gave one, I don't know, I think it was a couple of days ago that a friend of mine sent me. And he talks about the idea that they really are trying to take us back to a feudal system. Yeah, you love Cliff? Great. I'm glad to hear that, Felicia. Yeah, he's a really good guy. And I'll get back on the Mormon thing in a minute. Who was that? I got to see what they said there. Yeah, that's right, Woody. That's exactly what they say. I got to diverge here, just say what Woody says. Woody Hayes says, all Mormons I know have said they will follow the Mormon leader because they say he would not steer them wrong, lead them astray, is how they put it. And that's bullshit, okay? They've been led astray more times than you can shake a stick at. But that's another subject. Let's go back to Cliff High. So Cliff High gave a briefing. I should have put the link in here, but you can go find it. And he shows how the situation with the stick, okay, with the GMI, and then that gives you the opportunity to obtain a passport, and that passport will control your travel. He shows how that goes back to ancient times, medieval and even ancient times, where there were several classes of people. Of course, the elite that don't need those, right? And that's the way it is today. Look at the members of Congress who don't need to have the GMI. They've been exempted. The people in the White House have been exempted. Different federal agencies, et cetera, et cetera. How can this possibly be a health situation when they already exempt those people? And that argument we already know about. But the point is, they're the elites, and of course, people like the Rothschilds, and et cetera, et cetera. Then you have a group called the serfs. And the serfs are the ones that they're actually trying to control. They're the ones that can't leave their particular little area without permission of their liege, their lord. And that's exactly the system we're being put under. Okay? And then there's a group called he calls the Auslanders, the outlanders, the outliers, really. In Greek, the barbaroi. Okay, the barbarians. And they're the ones that can't be controlled. And that's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 100 million Americans right now that are refusing to go along with this system. We're the barbaroi. And we're the Auslanders, the barbaroi, who are kind of on the outside that they know they can't control, and we're putting a wrench in their gears. And they're not quite sure how to handle it. Go listen to Cliff High. It's a very, very good briefing, and I think he's right smack on. And that's really where we are. The big deal is that if they can't get us to kneel to them, they will destroy everything. They will kill everybody. They will release something that will kill everything. I have no doubt in my mind that that's what they'll do. Ich bin ein Ausländer. Is that what somebody said? Yeah, you are? Good for you, whoever said that. I lost it now, but okay. So getting back to the church leaders in Utah, that's right. There are a lot of Mormons that I know personally that are not going along with this. They're very unhappy with it. But as I said in that video a few days ago about the churches, the Mormon church wields a lot of power. And the governors, especially when the church they're wearing a set of shoes and clothes that the feds have given them. They're part of the secret society, the guys at the top. They're part of the secret societies that are doing these things to the people of this country and in the world. And a lot of Mormons don't want to hear that. And if I could sit down with you Mormons and talk to you in a nice small setting, I could show you everything that I'm saying now. I'm not going to try to prove that here. I'm just telling you about it, okay? Because I've been there. The Mormon leadership is evil. It's not just bad, it's evil. And they do not have a hotline to God, not the God that they claim they do. And this thing about the GMIs, amongst a lot of other things, are proof of that. And you better get on their ass and call them out for being the phonies and the impersonators and the imposters that they are, and the tyrants, because they're helping the tyrants in DC, New York, London, etc., to do what they're doing, even to their own people. In Israel, you all know, right, that Netanyahu and that group made it so they're forcing these, again, you know what I'm talking about, these GMIs on, I think it's like 90% of their population now. And they're having a real increase in sickness and death. And they're trying to blame it on something else, right? You and myself, right? Because, even though they're vaccinated, apparently us not being that way, we're somehow a danger to those who are supposedly protected. It's all BS. But you saw what Netanyahu did. Now, a lot of the Orthodox there tried to stand up against that and actually refused against it. But the point is, they're forcing it on their people, just like Biden's forcing it on us, and the Mormon Church leadership, along with the Catholic Pope, is doing the same thing, and Franklin Graham, etc., etc. So that's why Governor Cox, the little boy, I'd love to call him a lot of names. I send him tweets I know he doesn't listen to them. I'd go up to the Utah State Capitol and talk to representatives and senators, but I'm really not a Utah resident. I'm actually a Wyoming resident. But I have contact with, I tweet my senator there and my congressman there in Wyoming, and also the governor. But because of who I am and my background, as I've said before, I try not to get too far out in front of a major movement. I try to get you all to do that. And not because I'm not willing, but because of my past and because of my altercations with the intelligence community, et cetera, et cetera. My word doesn't mean much to those. They just ignore me. And if you want to ignore me, that's fine. But I'm going to say it again. I have the training, the education, and most importantly, the experience to know what I'm talking about, because I lived it. And I wrote two books about it, actually. One I'm going to show you again today. So, the president of the Mormon Church is evil for what he's doing. The Pope is evil. Franklin Graham is evil. These people talk wonderful deals. It's like Alex Jones. And I know you don't want to hear me say anything about Alex Jones, but you know what? He really says a lot of good stuff. But then I catch little things that tell me that it's one of those deals again of 99 truths to get one lie to you. A lot of people say he's a limited hangout. I'm not going to accuse him of that. It might very well be he's just trying to survive right now. Maybe that's all he's ever tried to do. But with all the good things he says, if he leads people astray to follow who he's trying to get them to follow, he's going to be as guilty of all these maimings and murders that the guy he's trying to get people to follow is. And I've called him out. By the way, apparently he actually knows I've done that. I'm getting some inside information on that. Apparently he knows about it. So at any rate, you Mormons better get out of your houses and go down there. Call up, defend Utah. Find out people that you can go and demonstrate. And I know demonstrations don't do any good, but you got to tell them you're mad. You really got to get mad. And go to the federal building in Salt Lake, and go to the state capitol if you want. And certainly go to 47 East South Temple and tell them to stop pushing this stuff. That it's a war, and that they're contributing to warfare against Americans and against the innocent people of the world. And that's exactly what it is. It is a kinetic war at this point. And Merrick Garland and Austin and Millie, you cowards, you evil, evil, conspiratorial, Marxist, communist tyrants. You need to be tried and dealt with accordingly. One more thing about the Mormon Church. I really like when David Knight talks about these pastors that submitted to the government and closed their doors and wouldn't have church, and how cowardly they were because they took money, and I've talked about that, right? The clergy response teams, a lot of them are in cahoots with the DHS, etc., right? So David Knight's been accosting them, rightly so, verbally, calling them out for the evil that they're doing, closing the doors of their churches and obeying the government rather than God. Then you have like the pastor Pulaski, I think is his name in Canada, who's been terribly mistreated. And then other pastors around our country and religious leaders that have been mistreated on this thing. Well, the Mormon Church closed all of their ward houses. That's their kind of like their church house. Didn't have any of their meetings since Trump and Fauci shut everything down 18 months ago. They just started going back to church. Probably, I've noticed the churches have cars and they're probably conducting services now, but it's only been for a short time, maybe a few months. I don't pay attention to the Mormons anymore at all. Their leadership disgusts me. They're so full of lies, I just can't handle it. I have friends that keep track of them, but I don't. I just find out about these things just because I'm passing through the news. But at any rate, so they did exactly what David Knight said was reprehensible, and that is they obeyed the government and shut their doors. Inexcusable. They think God's leading them. The people actually believe that God is leading them. Leading them is right. Leading them? No. You think God would bow down to them? And I'm not going to get into, Romans 13. No. I'm not going to give that to you. And I've talked about it before, and I'm not going to waste time here on it right now. Okay. Now, this is the part I wasn't sure I should do today. You ready, Felicia? You ready, Roosevelt? Ms. Cat, if you're here? I don't know if I should do this or not. But like I put that information from Guy Bouillon, by the way, you are Felicia. Guy Bouillon, the French-Canadian journalist, I've sent out some tweets about him, talking about my videos where I was talking about Dr. Carrie Madej and Dr. Zalewski, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think I mentioned it here on YouTube, right? Yeah. Well, as I told you, he went out and bought my autobiography. He found it. I won't tell you what he paid for it and all that. It was really a lot less than I thought because I've seen them as high as $300, the signed copies, the autographed copies from collectors. But anyway, he got one. And you can see it on his website. He's got a picture of it and he talks about it and all of that. So you just look up Guy Bouillon .com, I think is what it is. I don't have the link here. I put it up the last few days or so. But anyway, GuyBouillon.com, I think is what he's got it on. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is, like I said the other day when I talked about him putting it up and talking about my book, because people say I try to hide my background. And no, I don't. I've been public since I was 17, actually earlier than that. I was public when I was like 3 or 4 years old. I was on the front page of the Washington Post or the Washington Times, one of the two. I've been in the news for a long time for various things, and certainly since my early stint in the Army when I was a second lieutenant. Some of the things I did, I was called in to testify against a guy on the Brigadier General's list for committing a false flag. Of course, they didn't do anything to him. They let him off. But that's how early I was in getting involved in things, okay? And I called out the Mormon church. When I found out the Mormon church was lying to me, I actually went up and I talked to people in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles and the First Quorum of 70 and other representatives of the First Presidency. I never saw anybody in the First Presidency, the prophet or his two counselors. But I did see people that represented them, and they tried to lie to me as well. So I call these people out. I stood up against generals, colonels, cops, legislators, governors, even French military officers. I can tell you that story. That was a hell of a one. But at any rate, the point is, I'm not just a keyboard warrior. I've been on the front lines of individual rights since the start. There's an old saying, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will give my life to guarantee that you have the right to say it. Well, that's the way it is with the First Amendment. The Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof, and the responsibility of government to protect us in those rights. Corporations are just persons. Did you know that? A corporation is a non-living person. So how is it that a corporation, be it a church or be it a private company, commit crimes, infringe on your rights, and not be liable for the crime or the offense that they've made? Being a corporation is not a defense because it's a person under the law, and a person can commit crimes. So there's no excuse for the Heritage Foundation nor the Reason, the people that put out Reason and all that, to say that, the Ayn Rand position, that corporations can do no wrong. No, they can commit crimes as a corporation, and there are people inside that may be protected because of the corporate structure. But no, they cannot infringe on your rights, especially not when they're taking government contracts or money. It's wrong. So my point is that even if you don't go along with what my religious and spiritual convictions were and are, they've changed a little bit as far as what my order of importance is now, okay? But you may not agree with my religious or spiritual stand. But regardless, hi Liza Jean, but regardless, I have a right to determine what that is, not the government and not the company I work for. In 1998, I hadn't been in plural marriage for, 15 years, 12 or 15 years, something like that. And we'll get plural marriage, some of you are saying, what are you talking about? We'll get to it, just hold on. I was working for a company as a security director for the company, director of security. Of course, I was in the reserves too and all that, but Army Reserve. But my wife at the time decided that she wanted to counter a group who was anti-polygamy, a woman's group that was anti-polygamy. And she didn't like that. At least that's what she said. And she started an organization called the Women's Religious Liberties Union. You can look this up online. She started the Women's Religious Liberties Union, and the organization that she was trying to oppose was Tapestry of Polygamy. This is all in the 97, 98, 99, and on time frame, okay? I didn't know that she had started this organization. She did it without consulting me. Now, do I demand that she do that? That somebody report to me, especially a wife, when they're doing something? Well, not normally, but under this circumstance, this had to do directly with me. Why? Because I had stood for this. I had fought this whole battle in the 80s. okay? And I knew that even though she was taking this on herself and making this decision on her own, that I would be accused of putting her up to it, which I did not do. As a matter of fact, I got so upset about it, I'll just tell you, I threw a bowl of potatoes. When she told me about it, I threw a bowl of potatoes from the dining room into the kitchen sink, and because I knew what was going to happen. And that's exactly what happened. Um, I went along and supported her. And we were called on one of the interviews that we did was on the Lisa Gibbons show in Burbank, California. I think it was in Burbank. And the Lisa Gibbons show flew us out there. And I've done lots of these. Okay, I've done interviews all over the world, basically. All right, on this whole issue. And I won't rehash all of that, but there was a lot of it. I was even on the front page of People magazine, Us magazine, uh, um, New York Times, USA Today, et cetera, et cetera. Foreign, international publications, et cetera. Um, so I thought, well, okay, I took a couple of days off work. I think I took like 2 or 3 days off work, so I'm not at work. And I go on the Lisa Gibbons show, which was actually quite depressing in a lot of ways. It was of course the person that gets attacked is me, which I can usually take, but it was a really rough show. There was a lady in the audience who claimed that I was this abuser, and pointed it out to everybody. And if it hadn't been for a daughter of mine, I'm not going to mention her name, but a daughter of mine had been in the audience earlier, and then when this woman made this, she wasn't on the stage, this daughter of mine, but then this woman made this accusation that was totally a lie to defame me, and my daughter came down and sat next to me on the stage and looked right at this lady who turned out to be a journalist from Salt Lake City who was trying to she's probably a member of the LDS Church, I don't recall, but my daughter called her a liar on television, live television. So if she hadn't been there, people would have probably thought that it was true what this woman was accusing me of. So I went through a lot of that, okay? So at any rate, we did the show, and of course, it was at least a national show, if it also didn't have some international connections. And I came back to work, and I was there. It was my first day back to work, and I get a call to go in and see the general manager. Yeah. I go in and see the general manager, and he starts to say that I have no right to talk about my private life because it's an embarrassment to the company. Now, let me remind you, the company initially had hired me knowing my entire background. A former Salt Lake County Sheriff's captain helped me to get the job, and as well as a Murray police officer who knew me quite well. They vouched for me, as did my brother, by the way, who was at that time a sergeant on the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. So they all vouched for me in my military training, my police training, etc. So they hired me knowing my background. And everybody in the community that came, just practically, I mean, all the people that operated the stores and the kiosks knew who I was. I mean, that kind of information spreads like wildfire. They all knew. They all knew the day I went to work for them. And I had worked for them by the time this time period in 98 came along. I had worked for them for 6 years. Now, there had been a change. This is where the key thing happened. There had been a change in the ownership of the company. When I was first hired, it was owned by a company out of Seattle, Washington. Okay? Quite reasonable people, actually. All right? But in 97, that company sold it to a company out of San Diego. And that company out of San Diego was run, their executives were all temple card carrying Mormons. When I found that out, I knew I was going to be in trouble. Now, this is before the Lisa show, okay? I already knew I was in hot water with them. But they kind of played along with me for a little while. They didn't give me any trouble initially. When I went on the Lisa Gibbons show, general manager called me in, and this is a temple card carrying Mormon, right? Along with all the other people he had brought in with him, and of course the people back in San Diego. And he told me that I had no right to talk about my background, that it was an embarrassment to the company. And I told him, I said, I have a First Amendment right. It was off. It was off company time. I was on a vacation. You have no business to tell me that I can't talk. This was at least this, well, let's see. Yeah, this was the second time. I'm going to tell you some other things that happened. I just want you to know that I have stood up. Uh, I don't think I was in as much danger as some of the people like the doctors and the nurses and the police officers and the soldiers, especially the soldiers who are in danger of the UCMJ under this current situation. They're real heroes. But I did take some of the same persecutions and endangerments, especially for my family. Very young family, very young little family. Some people say, well, you weren't wise to do that. Well, I was put between a rock and a hard place where I really didn't have any other opportunity or any other possibility. So I stood up for myself at this meeting, and they knew that they couldn't do much. But the persecution was on. They started accusing me of a lot of different things that I didn't do. And finally, one of the things they had a lady set me up for sexual harassment, which I didn't do. We had a situation with where I was trying to get information. It's kind of hard to explain, but we had a concert in we had a concert in the mall, and it was not very well advertised. It was done by one of the stores. It was a jewelry store, as I recall, that was doing this dance. This yeah, it was a dance with live music in the mall, and we needed to have security for it. So I offered. The people said that they would pay my officers quite a bit of money per hour. I don't remember what it was, but just for the sake of it, let's say that their normal pay was $20 an hour. They were willing to pay them $40 an hour to do this. So that was the agreement. Well, nobody showed up. They had advertised it so poorly that no one showed up. So what occurred is the promoters of the dance came to me and said, hey, we didn't even make enough money to pay your security people. What do you want us to do? And I said, well, how much can you pay? And I think I had 5 officers working, as I recall. And so I went to my 2 top ranking. Well, not one was a sergeant. The other was just somebody who had been there for a long time, and I trusted both of these guys. And I went to them and I said, look, we've got a problem. I've only got enough to pay 3 people. I don't want to put you on the line, but I will put you on the payroll because it's in the company's interest that you were here during this particular event. But it's only going to be the company wage. Is that okay? Hi, Jeannie. And they were both very good about it. They said sure, because they knew the people that had put this dance on personally, and they knew they were struggling. So they gave them the benefit of the doubt. And then the other 3 were all given the $40 per hour or whatever it was. Okay. Well, what occurred was that a couple of those who got the $40 an hour saw that these other 2 took the hourly wage from the company, which was way less than what they did, but they thought they were double dipping. So they accused me of allowing these other 2 officers to get paid not only from the dance group, the people that are putting on the dance, but getting their company pay as well. And that was a lie. And you could see it. And I even got statements from the people that put on the dance that this was not the case. Now you might say, well, gee, why did your officers do that to you? They had already been approached by the management because of my position to try to get things on me. So they were looking for anything, and they thought they had me. Well, they didn't. I was able to prove that didn't happen. But then because I was getting statements in my defense from the store that was putting on the dance, and also from the officers that worked for me and some other things, because I was going out and getting statements on this, I received a letter from the company that said, and this is almost verbatim, you are forbidden to talk about work related things at work. What? I was the security director. And I'm being told that I can't talk about work related issues at work. They were trying to bottle me in again. So what occurred was, as one of my sergeants, uh, because I was management, I had some difficulties maneuvering this. I had a sergeant called the Labor Department, Federal Labor Department, U.S. Department of Labor, and they got involved, and the company had to recant, take back the order under threat of federal government intervention. But I was on their SHIT list, which I already was anyway. So there you go. And I had other problems after that. I went to another company, and remember that lady I was telling you about that was in the Lisa audience, that lied about me in the Lisa audience? At the second company I went to, she went and told them the same story she had told the Lisa audience. Caused me some troubles at the new place, and that's when I gave up and went to work with my wife Carol at her business. That's just a part of the story. Now I'm going to take you back to 1982. I had already stood up against the guy on the Brigadier General's list for the false flag. Went to court, had to testify against him. Was involved in the takedown of some people who were trying to steal explosives from the Tooele Army Depot. By the way, that was an FBI sting operation. It was actually an entrapment. And when I found out how the thing had gone on, I opposed how they did it, which was my first working with the FBI and showing how corrupt they can be. I went to the leaders of the Mormon Church to try to work out this problem with their claims on doctrine that were not according to the earlier church days. Suffered disfellowshipment at first. They didn't want to excommunicate me because they knew I was an Army officer, number one. By the way, the Army didn't care about this because I didn't have a second legal marriage. They only care about fraud or that I could be blackmailed. And I was open about it, so they weren't worried about it. But the church got upset, of course, but they didn't want to discipline me fully because I was an Army officer. So then I get on the Murray Police Department. I left the regular Army and I went to the Murray Police Department. Was my nickname on the department was Chaplain because of the way I did my police work. That should tell you about how I was looked at by the community. And I was the first officer to get an employee award in the department for my work. Well, the church and some other purist, prudish, accusatory Christians called up the state attorney general and complained that I was a polygamist on the Murray Police Department. Now, mind you, I didn't have a second legal marriage. All I did was I had this second family. Like a lot of officers have girlfriends on the side, and I could have named a bunch on the Murray Department. A lot of the officers were afraid I was going to do that too in retaliation, but I never did. Because they did have girlfriends, even if they were married. At any rate, the AG said, I ain't touching that. State AG, so I ain't touching that. So then they called the county attorney, Ted Cannon. Told him, and he says, that's his personal business. Get out of my office. Well, then they went to the chief of police. The chief of police was what they call a stake president. He's the hierarchy of the church is prophet, seer, and revelator, president, first presidency, quorum of the 12, first quorum of the 70, regional reps, and then right below them are stake presidents. So he was about midway up the chain. And he wasn't a very strong charactered guy. Nice man for the most part, but he just didn't have the guts to stand up against these people up at the church. So they told him to fire me, and that's what he did. There were other officers who had been caught in much worse circumstances, and they did nothing to them. So I started my court case, and I went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they denied writ of certiorari, so I ended up staying off the force, fired, terminated. And yet there was a similar case in Muskegon, Michigan, where the exact same circumstances had happened to an officer there, but he didn't do it for religious reasons. Yet the Court of Appeals ordered him to go back to work. I had all of his arguments, plus the First Amendment, and they wouldn't allow me to go back to work. We went to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, and believe it or not, I was sitting there when it happened. One of the judges on the triumvirate, it's a triumvirate, the three judges on the panel there at the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, actually said in open court, "We don't like Mormons, and we're not going to rule in this guy's favor." That's on the court record. So this chat is full of hate tonight. Starfire Horizon, I haven't been seeing it, probably because people don't want to hear this, and I really don't care. People are have accused me of trying to hide this, and I'm just spilling it out, okay? I married my first wife legally when I was 18. Didn't have to. She wasn't pregnant. Did it out of the way I do things. Married my first plural wife. I was 27. She was 27. Married my third wife when I was 29, and she was 25. All of them came to me. Then I married Carol in 1999. Other officers were able to keep their jobs. They knew they were living with other women, even though they were married, didn't care. But I stood up for my religious beliefs. I didn't budge. I feel bad because I dragged my family through it when they really weren't up to it. We were all very young. We had very young children. And so I overestimated their capability to go through that, and it was horrible. The persecution, the denial of employment opportunities, of rental properties, having my brake lines cut. Oh, yeah. Having my phone tapped. Let me tell you that story. My best friend on the Murray Police Department. I had been fired, and I was going to go to work as a private detective. I won't tell you with what company. I know they don't need to be harassed over this. So I went and I got my PI license, and as part of that, I applied for a concealed weapons permit. Now, having been a former police officer, normally in Utah, you automatically get a concealed weapons permit, but because I had been fired, I had to apply for one. And I got it. Well, I hadn't put in the paperwork yet. We had just talked about it on the phone, this friend of mine on the Murray Police Department. We had just talked about it on the phone. He said, "Hey, Roy, you really ought to go ahead and get your concealed weapons permit." And I said, "Okay, I'll put in for it." Well, I didn't do it right away. A couple of weeks passed, and I still hadn't put in the paperwork with the Department of Public Safety. I hadn't done it yet. And this friend of mine calls me up and says, "Hey, Roy, I see you got your concealed weapons permit." And I said, "No, I haven't even put the paperwork in yet." And he goes, "You're kidding me." And I said, "No, I haven't even applied yet." He says, "Roy, the command here at the police department is complaining that you're trying to get your concealed weapons permit and that they're afraid you're going to kill them all. And they've called me in and asked me why you were doing this." And I said, "Well, Alex," I just told you his name. I said, "Hey, buddy, no, I haven't even put the paperwork in yet. And no, of course I'm not going to use it to hurt anybody, That's not, if I had wanted to do that, I'd have done it long before this. This was like in 1990, somewhere in there." And I I was telling him, I says, no, no, Roy, you misunderstand. You misunderstand. How did they know? Because if you haven't put the paperwork in, I haven't talked to anybody about it. This is him talking. And he says, the only way they could have found out if they had tapped your phone. So I called the phone company. Sure enough, there was a tap on the line. Sure was. Next thing that happened, I thought I'd put in for a fire department job. I better stop, go back. I was called up by a general authority of the church, one of the members of the Quorum of 70, who had stood against the first presidency on some issues. And so he was politely released, but he had been on all the meetings and had been part of the let's see, what was the name of the organization in the church? It's actually a security organization. It's a spy organization to keep track of members. Strengthening Church Members Committee, which is actually run by the security apparatus of the church. He'd been part of that, probably even ran it, as I recall. He called me up and he said, Roy, we got to talk. And I said, you want to talk to me? He says, come by my house. So I did, but I had a feeling that something was up, so I wired myself so I could record the conversation. He admitted what they had done. Called up employers to keep me from getting hired. Called up people that I rented from to get us kicked out of our houses. Got involved with managers in the Army to interfere with my military career. I'm not going to go into the details of that. There was a lot of that because there were a lot of Mormons in the Army and positions of some prestige. And other things that this group had done to cause me difficulties. I had 2 copies of the tape because I had 2 tape recorders running in case one went out. I'd still have the other one. I didn't do anything with it. I just kind of held on to it for a while. I went to put in for a job with the Salt Lake County Fire Department. Tested, was number 2 on the list. Never done any firework before, but I scored number 2 on the written, and on the physical, I was number 1. On the interview, I was given an interview date to go and be interviewed for the job. And then they recanted. And they said, oh no, we're going to pass you over. They didn't tell me they were going to pass me over, but they said, no, we're not going to interview you this round. They do 3 interviews on a list. They did the second interview and I still wasn't invited in. They finally invited me in on the 3rd round of interviews. I showed up for the interview, okay, sat down in the office, was scheduled. The secretary logged me in. I was there for 5-10 minutes waiting. She gets up, she comes over to me, she says, we've decided that we're not going to do another hiring. We're going to retest. We're just going to start over again. I could have sued them on that one. I didn't. I went home, got the 2 tapes, and I went right down to the FBI building downtown Salt Lake. Went in, said I needed to talk to an agent. An agent, Johnny Turner, came out. I told him, I said, I've got something on a civil rights violation and on illegal activity, and I'd like to report it, but I'm not sure you're going to do anything about it. And Johnny Turner says to me, oh, we're the FBI. We're so professional. You have nothing to worry about. We're going to do the right job. I said, okay. I've worked with you before. Do you remember the deal out in Tooele? And you remember this other deal and this deal? He goes, oh, yeah. I said, that was me. He goes, oh. So he puts on the earphones and he starts listening, and it was obvious he was very concerned. Several times while he was listening to the tape, he stops and he says, this is crazy. This is incredible. This is the best evidence for a civil rights violation and maybe some criminal conduct I've ever heard. I said, I told you. When he was done, he put the headphones down. He said, Roy, you're right. This is serious. But I have to be honest with you. Despite the fact that I told you how much integrity the FBI has, this isn't going to be going anywhere. I have to send it back to D.C. they're going to decline it, and they're going to get off scot-free. And that's exactly what happened. Fortunately, I kept a second copy of the tape because the tape that he sent forward as evidence, they never returned to me. Gee, I wonder why. But I have a second tape. And that transcript is in this book, which I published in 1996. Okay, and this is the one that Guy Bouillon got, the French Canadian. He went and he purchased it on his own. And the story's in here. And unfortunately, it's not in print anymore. It's all in used books. You can't find it new anymore. I have a friend that's considering republishing it, but I don't know. And then I added an addendum in, first addendum was 1990, and then I think I did another one in like, not 1990, 2000, another one in like 2004, and then another in 2008. I haven't done any updates since then, and I don't really plan on it. But that's what I did. And this book was actually the reason why I did is because I had an award-winning freelance journalist come to me and say that she wanted to write the book. And we did some interviews, but she was Mormon. So when the leadership of the church found out that she was doing this book to publish it, she was shut down. Gee, I wonder why. Gets into the court case. It gets into what the police department did, the Army. It gets into the persecutions I went under from the church and the state of Utah. And it talks about how corrupt the LDS church is. It includes a situation in here, just as an example, some of the people I met when I was fighting this whole thing. A guy by the name of Garn Baum. He was a member of the church, and he owned a cherry canning factory in Provo, Utah. And he would get cherries from the local cherry farmers and can them, right? Process them. Well, the church wanted his facility, and they had tried to negotiate with him because they like to get good businesses, right? So because that's what the church is about, is business and investments. I could tell you about that. Guy got kidnapped off the street by church security that had published about the financial problems, and that's in here too, that he had published about the church's financial transactions. They kidnapped him off the street and took him in for questioning, and he actually saw my name on a board in there. So they told me about that. But anyway, getting back to Garn Baum. So Garn Baum had this cherry processing plant and wouldn't sell to the church. So what they did is they went around to all the cherry farmers and said, because they were all members of the church or subject to their authority, and said, don't sell to Garn Baum anymore. Don't sell to him. That's RICO. That's conspiracy. That's not just business practices. So he tried to sue the church, and they destroyed him. Kind of like what Trump did to the little lady who had her house over there in Atlantic City, and he wanted her house and he was trying to buy her out, so she wouldn't sell, so he got the city to declare it condemned so he could get the property. Or like what he did to people in Las Vegas. I have a friend who was a contractor in Vegas when this happened, and they were working on his buildings there, and Trump stiffed a lot of them on minor details. Didn't pay them millions of dollars. He stiffed them for millions of dollars. Well, LDS Church does that to their own members too. Just like Netanyahu poisons and destroys and maims and kills his own people, and like Biden's doing to us, like Trudeau's doing to his people, Macron, Merkel, Jojo, I'm not telling you to go find this. I think it's too expensive. I think at the time we were selling it for 10, 11 bucks new. Um, I doubt that you could find one for less than $50 now. Probably more than that. I'll show you the. I'm going to show you a couple of pages here. I have some photographs in here. I'm not going to show all of them because they're pictures of my kids and stuff, and I don't think that's right to put up. But let's see if I can do this without showing too much. I don't think I can. There's a picture of a BBC film crew in here, but I can't put it up without showing you other things. This is me in an interview on television. I think you can all see that. Okay, that's me sitting down there. I went on Phil Donahue, CBS Morning News, Good Morning America, etc., etc., etc. This is me with my police car. This picture, there's a story behind this one. That's me in an Army uniform on the bottom there with one of my daughters when they were young. We wore khaki uniforms back in those days. But that picture there with the trucks and all that, there's a story in the book here about that, where there were these people stealing explosives. And I hid in a trench across the street. I was like the forward observer for the SWAT team. I was like the forward observer. And it was cold. I think it was January, somewhere in there. Snow on the ground, freezing, wind blowing. And I saw them unloading this stuff, and then the colonel, the commander, called me on the radio and said, "Can you get across the street there without being seen and see what's in there? Be careful. They're armed and all this." I said, "Sure, yes, sir, no problem." So I get over there and I laid down next, and we thought they were going to be wooden crates with like grenades or claymore mines in them, right? Because of we knew what igloo they went into, but we weren't sure what they were pulling out of it. Well, I'm laying there beside this, and I'm not kidding you. By this time, there were probably, 30 boxes, cardboard boxes, about the size of, I don't know, a regular size suitcase. I was looking for something I could show you here, but just say a regular size suitcase. And I'm going, these aren't grenades or claymores. What the heck is this stuff? And why couldn't our guys who were downrange watching across from the other igloos be able to figure out what these are? Why couldn't they see? I didn't know. But I reached over and I pulled off the top of one of the boxes I was laying next to. And I reached in. It was C5 explosive, C4 or C5 explosive. And I went, ooh. I got to get out of here. The radio is going off, right? So the colonel said, "What's up? Can you give a report?" And I don't dare transmit because I don't know what's going to set this stuff. If that stuff went off, not only would it vaporize me, but it probably would have taken out half of Tooele City. So I said, no. So I waited to make sure it was safe, no traffic or these guys coming back with a load or whatever. And I ran like crazy. And it was about probably a mile across a snow field pasture to where the command vehicle was. And I ran over there and I came in and I said, "That's C4, C5, I forget which. C4 explosive, I think is what it was." I said, "Sorry, sir, I didn't dare transmit. I kind of liked myself in one piece." Anyway, that's that story. So this is a picture of the federal building in Salt Lake that I went to talk to the FBI, and that's me as a major sitting at one of my jobs as a major in the Army. Let's see if there's anything else of any interest here that I can show you without getting into too much trouble. This one might be of interest. Like I told you, I played in bands. This is me in the Army on a field exercise. I was training Saudi officers, And I don't want to show you that picture. I can show you this one here. When I was at Fort McClellan, I was in a band, and this is the band I was in. This guy right here had been a lead guitarist for Sly and the Family Stone, and we were the guys that put together this band. I rubbed elbows when I went to the Army War College. I was actually the guy who was Dr. Gregory Treverton's bodyguard from the CFR. And let me see what else in here might be of interest in here. Maybe I can show this to you. This is the BBC film crew. If you can see that. And that's probably enough. Kind of shows my history, you know, what I did. Pardon me a minute. So I've been at this a long time. Whether or not you agreed with it's like that, like I said here a few minutes ago. I may not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend you to the death. Your right to say it. Same thing here. Okay? You may not like my religious or spiritual preferences, but you should understand that I have a right to determine what those are, not you, not the government. And certainly in the situation we're now in, they cannot prohibit people from putting these religious exemptions in, and then the government or the corporation deciding if those are legitimate or not. It's none of their business. Not to mention the HIPAA regulations. I mean, when the AIDS thing was going on, you couldn't ask anybody if they had AIDS, and there were laws passed where, you know, you couldn't do anything to them. You couldn't prevent them from working or anything. And now they're doing this. The hypocrisy is unbelievable. I need a drink of water. I know this is going on a little long, but I thought it might be a good thing to go through it. Now, I didn't stop there, of course. After it was about 2000, after my wife died, 2008, Carol, from ovarian cancer, and I've talked before about what I think caused that. She was a victim of an attack, I'm pretty sure, while I was deployed. That's another story. I'm not going to discuss that again tonight. After she died, I did some films, and I got on YouTube, and I started talking about science and religion and politics and military stuff. And then in 2013 or whenever the Boston bombing was, I did an analysis of the Boston bombing, and boy, that brought hell down on me from the IC right then. So they started giving me trouble, accusing me of never having been in the Army and never being a lieutenant, much less a lieutenant colonel, et cetera, et cetera. It was really bad, saying that I exaggerated my military career. I never did any such thing. By the way, not everything that you do is on your official record, despite what they'll tell you. Not everything you do is on your official record. I also put out my resolution of a former idealist, and as to why I was upset about the government, about the military, about our perpetual war, our perpetual lies, which set me on the course I am today. And after the Boston bombing thing, I talked about General Petraeus and some other things like that. And then the Bundy Ranch thing came along, and I participated at Bundy Ranch, as most of you should know. I did not sit on my arse. Since then, I've been at several different demonstrations, stayed politically active to some extent, but I'm careful. And the reason why I'm careful is because people like to accuse you of things and defame you. And the reason why I don't join any organizations, not only because I'm afraid they're infiltrated, which most of them are by InfraGard, FBI, IC, etc., which they are, but also because if I get in there and somebody finds out I'm there, they'll discredit the entire organization because my name will show up. And I don't want to do that to anybody who's out there trying to do the right thing. But I support them 100%. So that's my story, and here we are today, and I could tell you a lot more. uh, the IC actually sent honeypots against me, tried to get me in with honeypots. One that was quite a long relationship. This was after my wife died. Um, I finally found out what that was all about. I didn't want to believe it, but it was true. Um, and they had done that several times. Most of them I didn't take the bait. One of them I got hooked on, and it took me a while to finally figure it out. I won't go into the details on that, but that was very dangerous. I almost ended up in the Pacific Ocean with cement boots. Seriously. During Jade Helm, I was heavily surveilled. And people say, well, they don't need to do ground surveillance because they can do it digitally. No, they were verifying their information. And I confronted several agents who were surveilling me and tracking me. Now, for a little liquid refreshment, not just water, I poured this earlier. I think it's time. This is Jack Daniels in tonic water. I think I deserve it, don't you? If you've got some, join me. Now, I've been going for an hour and 20 minutes, but I wanted to. I'm really getting tired of being accused of hiding my background or exaggerating my experiences, etc., etc. I don't need to exaggerate or embellish. I've done it all. I would prefer to have gin and tonic tonight, Bellicose Hyperbole 737, but I don't have any gin. That was so good. I'd never had gin and tonic before. The first time I had it was like, I don't know, a month ago, and then I went and bought some gin. I think I had gin and tonic at a friend's house or whatever, and that really is my favorite. Did you earn a military pension? No, they wouldn't let me. See, that's another thing. I spent 28 years, and between the Mormon Church and its influence, which I told you about, because the guy that I interviewed and taped, he even said they were interfering with my Army career. There's a thing in the Army. Uh, you have to be on active duty to get points, or you have to have points that you earn through the year. And you have to earn a minimum of 50 points a year. What they did was is they made sure that my deployments and my ability to get positions where I could earn points would never amount to the amount to give me a retirement. But I think God was working that out, because I would not have been able to attack Obama, verbally attack, right? Because under the UCMJ, even a retired officer, if he's officially retired with retirement pay, he's still subject to the UCMJ. You can't be disrespectful, the way they say it, of your leadership, your command, the chain of command, and the President of the United States. So I would have been silenced. I wouldn't have been able to tell you about the CFR and about President Obama and about President Bush, George W. Bush, right? And certainly about Trump, and even now Biden. As a matter of fact, I didn't come down on a fellow officer, but I was a little upset that a lot of these conservatives, some military retired officers, who refused to call out Trump for the things Trump was doing. And I figured, well, okay, they can only go so far. I'm not under that restriction because I'm not under the UCMJ. So I kind of understand it. And then after Trump went out of office and Biden got in, they started unloading on Biden, calling him names that you could get court-martialed for. So I just said, hey, how come you're willing to do this under Biden? I mean, I understand why you were careful with the UCMJ, but if you'll do it under Biden, I don't understand why you wouldn't do it under Trump. And the guy called me a moron. No, Trump didn't change. He didn't change. He was always that way. Don't forget, he didn't go after Hillary. He showed the LGBTQ flag. He did the red flag laws and the bump stock bans. The Las Vegas shooting, I think he knew more about what that was, and I've talked to you about it. I think that was a sacrifice to Moloch, and he was involved. I do. I can't prove it, but it makes sense with everything else about him. About the Palantir that he put his hands on with the king of Saudi Arabia and the president of Egypt. His deferring to Fauci and all this nonsense that he's put the American people through. He didn't do it ignorantly, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry, he didn't. And if he had, why isn't he recanting on his OWS now? No, no. You're drinking Jameson, Bobby Wells? Good for you. Good for you. Yeah, Marfool's Gold. Yeah, CFR, Council on Foreign Relations. So you see, I actually did work with him. I was the guy's bodyguard. His bodyguard. And I went to the, because I was his bodyguard, I went to the briefings. I was there for the briefings. I heard what they were talking about. Another inside. Okay, I was there. I learned about what they were up to. I can't talk about it. I mean, it's probably been a number of years now where I probably could, because you're only under those non-disclosures and classifications for so long. So I probably could talk about it, but I'm not going to, just to be on the safe side. Kabbalah itself isn't bad. It's how it's used, Kevin. It's just like a screwdriver. You can use it to, help you build things, or you can use it to kill somebody. Kabbalah is the same way. Okay, don't throw it all out the window. Oh, I could tell you a story, Empire, about you're saying a worship site of Moloch in California. When I was at Fort McClellan, a friend of mine, another fellow officer, and we decided to take a drive up in this. They call them mountains out there, but they're not. They're more like hills. But we thought we'd go on this night drive on this country road, 2-lane country road, and so we're driving along. It's pitch black. You can't see a thing, but there's this glow over on the left side as we come around this corner, and we're going, gee, what's that? Well, we couldn't see a house. We couldn't. So we said, let's go see what it is. So we parked, and we walked back through the woods. And it's getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And finally, we come up and we see this group, and they're all in hoods. It's not who you think they are. They're all in hoods, and they've got security guys stationed around. They were Satanists. They weren't KKK. It was a coven in Anniston, Alabama. We didn't stay there too long. We got out of there pretty quick. Never know what those crazy people are going to do. So that was an interesting situation. Oh, I like that, Michael Jackson. Enjoy your whiskey. Cheers. Nothing gets done to the evildoers drinking adrenochrome. Disgusting. Boy, isn't that true. That's another thing that I got in trouble for, which is in my book. In I think it was in 1990, there was an investigation going on of ritual satanic abuse all over the country, and there were people who were saying it was hodgepodge, that they were planting these memories in the kids, and I'm sure some of that happened. But there was a situation where the Franklin Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska, had been implicated in some ritual satanic abuse by some people that were accusing them of that. And the state senator there, Senator John DeCamp, was investigating along with a group of investigators. And they ran into all kinds of problems, as you can imagine, because of the horsepower of the people that were involved in this abusive stuff. Well, anyway, about that time, there was a talk given by Elder Pace of the Mormon Church. I think he was the presiding bishop at the time. Gave a talk about ritual satanic abuse in the Mormon Church. I think it was during conference, if I'm not mistaken. And he said that there were problems in certain of the stakes and that they needed to stop this. Well, the presidency, the Mormon president, summarily excused him and sent him off on a mission, and he was never heard from again. Well, because of that, that's when Senator DeCamp called me up. I was well known because of some things that happened at Murray. I had inside information about church leaders involved in very evil things. And so Senator DeCamp called me up, and I talked to him personally. He said, look, we need you to help us in this investigation. Will you do that in Utah? Because there's some ties to the Franklin Credit Union in Utah, and we'd like you to verify and uncover anything else you can. And I said, sure. Well, he didn't put my name in his book when he wrote it, because that would have just, again, my name would not have helped him out at all. But I did help out in the investigation, and that was to stop some of this ritual child abuse and child trafficking. So I was in on that as well. Of course, the church knew about that, and so did the Utah state government, and so did the feds. So that got me another black eye with them. See how I've been involved in all this stuff? Yeah, it's true. Demon possession is off the charts or something. I don't know. It's crazy. Monty talked about Trump's new website. Yeah, I heard he was going to do that. I mean, the website, and I haven't looked at it. Everything about Trump, it just disgusts me. I just don't. As a matter of fact, I started to promote that Liberty Conference that's happening in Salt Lake this weekend. And then after what Alex Jones did, fingering all the people in this OWS stuff and not fingering Trump, I said, no, I'm pulling back my support of that. And I told you, I said, I'm taking all that down, and I'm not encouraging anybody to go and listen to Flynn and all those people. Not that the subject matter is, by and large, isn't good, because it probably is, but they're doing it for Trump, not for you, not for liberty. Why do I hate Trump? Nancy Beaver, are you kidding me? Oh, I'm not gonna spend my time on that. Why don't you just go figure it out for yourself? Go to my YouTube site, go to Headlines with a Voice, uh, go on my Twitter line, go see High Impact Flicks. And I do hate him. He's a deceiver, a liar, a prevaricator. I know all those are pretty much the same things. A charlatan. He takes away widows' homes. He won't pay contract workers, stiffs them. I don't care about his multiple marriages. I can justify that. I know you'll say, what? David Knight wouldn't, but, I understand the biblical things. And as far as I can tell, he didn't do anything quite like what they say, but only on the stuff I know about. Roy, where the hell have you been? What do you mean, where the hell have I been? I'm right here. Oh, did he? Did he really? G-Man Neo, Roy, you missed AJ today, called out Trump to repent today on a show. That's fine. I'm glad he did that. He's kind of done that before, but not to the extent he needs to. The way he lays out thing against Fauci and Gates, the way he lays those things out, he's got to do that with Trump. But I'm glad he did it. I think AJ could gain more respect in my eyes if he really concentrates on that, stops avoiding it. And if he has, great. And you're right, I didn't see the show today. I had other things to do. I don't watch AJ that much. I give him 10, 15 minutes when I do. And if I hear what he's going to talk about and it's not what I'm interested in, I forget about it. But if he's done that, that's great. Kudos for him. I'm glad he did. It's a good thing. But he has another thing he needs to do. AJ treated David Knight not only with disrespect, but unchristian-like behavior. Fired the man. Caused him some difficulty, which I'm not going to go into. David Knight's talked about that. That's his story. So I'll believe AJ's serious. That's the first thing. He calls out Trump, and he does it every day. And he publicly apologizes to David Knight. I know David wouldn't go back there even if Alex offered him his job back, and that's okay. I don't expect Alex to offer him his job back. But by damn, he needs to do a public apology to David Knight. David Knight was with me at Bundy Ranch. He put his life on the line. Literally, he could have been shot. He went to Malheur, same situation. He went to that post in, I think it's in Virginia, where they train to take down Americans in American cities. And he reported on that and got arrested. And because he wouldn't support Alex in his grifting for Trump, he fires him. No, he has to do that too. Call out Trump daily and make a public apology to David Knight. Then I'll believe he's serious. All the other spiritual stuff he talks about, most of it's really good. But I don't know why he does it. Because you have to ask forgiveness for those you have offended. And he hasn't done that. I agree with a lot of his viewpoint. A lot of people say, well, that's New Age, that's Masonic. No, that's your interpretation of things, you see. I talk about a lot of things that could be considered New Age, but they're not. They're Israelite tradition and the religion of Abraham. Yeah, Jesse, that's right. With the National Guard taking over the supply chain, watch for proof of GMI. Yeah, this is a war. Kissinger said they use food as warfare. Uh, they're already making it, so you've probably already heard it, right? They're talking. Somebody tried to submit a bill into Congress that would prevent them from making a bill, a law, or a regulation or whatever to keep Social Security recipients from receiving their Social Security if they won't get the GMI, and it was rejected. Well, that's starvation. This government's not about protecting anybody. It's about getting you in line with the AI and the New World Order and the Mark of the Beast. Yeah, prep, pray, stay out of the way. AJ's Alex Jones. Alex Jones, C. Garcia. Alex Jones. I don't repeat his name too much because then it gets even David Knight saying his name too much. You can get in trouble with the AI and the guys that are watching the streams. Yeah, John Durham. I don't know. I'm not certain that he's really moving ahead. I mean, this late in the game, what good is it going to do? Really, right? Yeah, that's right, Roosevelt. AJ still has Knight locked out from some things. That's another thing that AJ could do. Release his what David did there. That's actually his work product. That would just be part of the open apology tonight, because David had to start almost from scratch, which was really, I mean, what AJ did tonight. AJ doesn't like it when the mainstream media does it to him, or the IC, or attorneys, and yet he turned around and did the same thing to David Knight. Well, a good way for AJ not to go broke, Dixon Brown, is to show that he's really repented. Again, call out Trump every single damn day in detail and publicly apologize to David Knight and to return David Knight his work product. Wow, that's a good point. Perceptive Strategics asks, what's the break point for Americans that finally gets them to fight back? I don't know. I thought it was when they masked up their kids. This is the time of separation. The strong are being separated out. The rest are weak lackeys of the devil and the government. I don't know if they'll ever fight back. If they won't stop what's happening to their children, they're not going to stop. They're not going to attempt to stop anything. So we're on our own. We've got to gather with like minded people, as I've said before. I would like to do it in a particular place because there's strength in numbers in a place. There's also dangers in that, but I think that's necessary, right? We'll see. I don't any 0 100. I don't know that Alex took a Satan contract. I think Alex is concerned about two things: his access and his money, and maybe his family at this point. But none of those would really be hurt substantially, in my opinion, if he admitted what he did to David and if he calls out Trump every day. Of course, that's my opinion. I have a tendency to give people the benefit of the doubt even when they don't deserve it. AJ broke down crying yesterday. Well, then do the right thing, AJ. Call out Trump every single day in detail and apologize to David. Wow, we've been going for an hour and almost 2 minutes now, so I think it's time to go, don't you? It's evening. You guys probably want to have dinner or whatever else, be with your families. Thanks for being here. I know I went way overboard on my personal history, and there's a lot more I could tell you. This isn't like a time of confession where I finally confessed all the things I've done. No, all this has been public for years. Maybe not all the details, but you don't go and write a book like this when you're trying to hide things, or go on public national and international media so people that have claimed that I was hiding my background. Pardon me, I got to move some things to get this book back in here. They're either uninformed, ignorant, or they're provocateurs and antagonists. And most of them, I think, are the latter. All right. That's all I've got for the night, and I've tried to go through a little bit of the chat here. Bullet shrapnel radiation from nuke, needle from a syringe, all well. Yeah, that's right. It's like I've said, our DOD is asleep or they're treasonous. Our DOJ, the same. All of the federal parts, most of the governors. Look at the governor of Utah, Cox. You know that I've called him names that rhyme with his name, right? Because he is. He's a little cheap, scared little man. A little yes man to the devil and his minions. They're attacking on all fronts, in depth, and full spectrum dominance. And Austin and Milley know it, and they're doing nothing to protect you from this attack, this warfare. They're traitors of the worst type. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Prep, pray, stay out of the way. Stay out of the way. I don't mean not to go to demonstrations, although they don't do a lot of good, but better than nothing. Stay active, sure. Spread the information. But if you see Antifa and BLM going at it, don't get involved. You can do defensive operations. Don't do anything offensive. Code Red, Do Girl, Roy Potter, I almost see a look of defeat in your facial expressions. I'm tired. Because it even says that'll happen to us. And the beast shall wear out the saints of the Most High. Wear out, boy, wear out. And to some extent, the beast prevails till the end. Yeah, I'm tired. I'll admit it. I've been having, I don't know about anybody else, but I've been having really disturbing dreams lately. It's in the air. The evil is rising. I'm just wondering. I think God's rising too. The good spirit from God is rising. We're seeing it in these people that refuse to get this GMI and will be willing to lose their jobs. By the way, when I was hauled in by the police department, they didn't want me to give up my job. Did you know that? I didn't talk about that. You know what they said to me? I'm sitting there with the chief, the assistant chief, the captain, the lieutenant, the city attorneys. This is what they say to me. And some of them have girlfriends. I'm not going to tell you who. They're married and they have girlfriends. They're doing the same thing I do, but not for religious reasons. So I had the additional defense of the First Amendment, right? So I'm sitting there, and this is the offer they give to me right up front. They say, all you need to do is deny your religious beliefs and divorce your wives, and you can keep your job. So not only did they ask me to violate my religious beliefs, but they told me to abandon my wives and children. I refused. So if you're going to condemn me for that, you got some problems. As it turns out, the pressure was too much for the girls. The court case, the persecution, the lack of employment, the lack of being able to live in a decent place. They even kept us from living in decent homes. And yeah, they finally all left. Except Carol. She's the one that I put up her little meme there the other day, thanks to somebody else who actually presented it to me, and then I spread it everywhere. She told me once, I won't tell you what the circumstances were, but it had to do with some of the members of my family. She said, Roy, you can't apply logic to a situation that has none. And that certainly applies to us today, too. Hold on a minute. Let's see if you can see this. That's Carol right there. When I was deployed after 9/11, I took 10 days leave and I met her in Venice, Italy. And she's standing on the Rialto Bridge looking towards the down the canal towards the Salute. She was a casualty, I'm certain, of this insanity. I told this story once before. Why she probably got cancer. You know, Johnson & Johnson was sued because of their talcum powder causing ovarian cancer. When I left her in Venice, a friend of hers came, a high school sweetheart, a high school friend, to spend a few more days with her in Venice so they could do some sightseeing. And I had to go on downrange. Before I left, we had run into some problems while I was there. I knew I'd been followed by different security services. That was real. I mean, it was obvious I was an American soldier, right? So I told her to be careful, not to accept any gifts from strangers, to make sure that, She looks before she walks somewhere and always keeps an avenue of escape, those kinds of things. Because I was leaving her alone, and usually a place that would be pretty good, but I worried about her. So I'm at my headquarters, and some other things have been happening, which I can't get into. Uh, Breaches of information on my official records. Somebody had gotten into the official records at the Pentagon and caused me some grief there. Anyway, I got a call from her. She actually called me, and she said she was still in Venice. And she said, "Well, Roy, I've got a problem. I met this old man on the street, and he came up to me and he said, 'Oh, pretty lady.'" Carol could speak Italian. She wasn't fluent in it, but she was proficient enough she could understand it. Pretty lady, oh, let me give you this. You're so pretty, thank you." And he handed her a little stuffed bear. And if you remember, the anthrax attacks were going on at the time. And some stuffed toys have been found to have ricin or anthrax or other things in them here in the States and elsewhere. Well, so she said thank you, and went back to where we had been staying, and a friend's place had allowed us to use their place in Venice. Plush, oh my gosh, right on the canal. It was beautiful. So she took it back, and apparently she was sitting down looking at it, and it blew up. Got in her eyes, the powder got in her eyes, in her nose, in her mouth. Breathed it in. She says, "What do I do?" And I said, "I told you not to accept any gifts. You need to call the Carabinieri right now and get them to come and investigate. And you need to decontaminate. And this is how you do it." And I told her what to do. It's probably depleted uranium in the powder, talcum powder. So I've lost a lot. And it was my fault, because when the Army called me up and said they wanted me to deploy, I could have turned them down. But I believed the lies, and I shouldn't have. And I will never give them the benefit of the doubt again. Ever. Thanks for being here.